I go back and forth depending on who I talk to about whether it really happened. And I think the percentage of Americans who don't believe that we went to the moon is just rising every year. I hope I have nothing to do with that.
I'm sure you have something to do with that.
But they lost the tapes, all the original tapes of the moon landing. What you watch when Neil Armstrong climbs off the LEM, One Small Step for Man, that's not a direct feed from anything. That was projected on a wall in NASA, and the networks aimed their camera at the wall to get like this projection. And the networks were like, "Hey, can we just get the direct feed? Because that would be a lot better." And they're like, "No, we're going to do it this way." And then they lost all those tapes. They lost the telemetry. And when asked, why don't we go back? NASA said, well, we can't replicate that technology. It's too difficult.
Yeah. Isn't there like some, I don't know what you call it. We can't get past a certain point, supposedly. They said I think it was your episode. They're like, we lost the technology. It's like you lost the technology to get us to the moon. You just happened to lose it.
Nobody wrote.
Where did it go?
They just lost it. You might be talking about the Van Allen radiation belt.
That's it.
Right, which is high velocity particles. And it's this energetic field that surrounds the Earth and is very dangerous. And if you're aware of something called the South Atlantic anomaly, it's this part of our geomagnetic field that it's burning a hole through it. If you look at it on like an electromagnetic map, it's just a big hole. It's getting bigger, and now it's starting to branch off into a second one, and nobody knows why that's happening. And geomagnetism and the pole shifts and all that, I can go down that rabbit hole too, because all that stuff terrifies me.
Do it.
Solar radiation and the grid going down, all that stuff terrifies me. So the Van Allen radiation belts, that you have NASA astronauts saying, oh, we think we found a way now that we can get out of, high Earth orbit, that we can finally get past the Van Allen radiation belts. It's like, we already did that, man, didn't we? Didn't we do that 17 times or whatever? But they forgot. They lost it. Can't replicate it.
Unbelievable.
I don't buy it.
I don't buy it either.
So just let us know what's going on.
So this is from Lucinda Carey. What are your thoughts on the flood? Your thoughts on the construction as described in the Bible, how the animals traveled, and do you think the ark is located in Turkey?
Okay. So what are my thoughts on the flood, generally speaking? It's actually a really good question, because there's a lot of different opinions, scholarly opinions, in regard to the flood of Noah. Of course, you have the traditional narrative that most Christians subscribe to, that every square inch of planet Earth was covered in water, that the tip of Mount Everest was underwater, and that the flood was universal in that sense. Then you have a lot of scholars who subscribe to a local flood theory or regional flood theory that posits that the flood was localized to the ancient Near East or to the Mediterranean, that maybe the Mediterranean Sea is what flooded, and so the civilizations, the known world at the time, was absolutely destroyed, was brought to ruin in this aqueous cataclysm, but it was localized. And there's a lot of good scholars who subscribe to the local flood, and they use the text. I mean, the support for their theory comes from the text. They use the same words that describe the flood in the Bible, and they derive a different meaning from those words. And then there's a theory that I subscribe to, which is a global cataclysm. So I believe that the entire Earth was subjected to cataclysm, but that the effect of the cataclysm was variegated depending on where you happen to be located on planet Earth. So if you were living on in the coastal regions or on the bank of a river, you experienced an aqueous cataclysm. In other words, catastrophic flooding. And if you were living on the bank of the Mediterranean, catastrophic flooding. But if you were living in the mountains or a different region of the earth, you would have experienced a cataclysm, but with different effects. I think that there was extreme volcanism. I think that there was massive earthquakes, and I think what precipitated the flood. I'm persuaded at this point that what precipitated the flood was a comet impact or an asteroid impact, sometime around 12,000 years ago, in the neighborhood of 10,000 BC. And this, of course, is known as the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis, that during the end of the last ice age, there was a cataclysmic impact on the North American ice sheets, specifically the Laurentide ice sheet, which was 1 mile to 2 miles thick, and that the ice sheet was bombarded by these celestial objects. And that catalyzed a cataclysm of unprecedented magnitude that would have resulted in catastrophic flooding, mile-high tidal waves, extreme volcanism, everything that I mentioned previously.
Does this line up with Noah when he was alive?
So you have, within Christianity, you have different thoughts in regard to the age of the earth. The fundamentalist views that the earth is 6,000 years old, and they don't allow for any more time in regard to the flood event. I'm not a young earth creationist. I think that the earth is very old, and I think that the creation of humanity goes deeper into the past.
Really?
Yeah, I would.
So what do you think of Adam and Eve then?
I think Adam and Eve were real. I mean, I think we all come from a common ancestor from Adam and Eve. I do not subscribe to the theory of evolution by natural selection. I think that's a theory in crisis, by the way. I think it's becoming less feasible by the day, evolution by natural selection. So I don't subscribe to that. I just think that, the flood, that this event, which annihilated the megafauna. This was the megafaunal extinction, right? We know that happened. We know that at one time, right here where we're sitting, there were mastodons, saber-toothed tigers, short-faced bears, giant sloths roaming this land and all over the world. And then suddenly something happened overnight that absolutely liquidated these creatures from the face of the earth. And again, I at this point am persuaded that was the Younger Dryas impact event. That this was, and this, by the way, in my opinion, is the cataclysm that's described in the pages of Scripture, the cataclysm that we read about in Genesis, in the book of Genesis. And in the Mediterranean area, it would have manifested most prominently in catastrophic flooding. I mean, if you have a mile-high tidal wave sweeping across the ocean, whatever civilization is inhabiting the coastal regions is gone. I mean, totally wiped out. Yeah. I mean, there would be almost nothing left of that civilization. Those waves would be powerful enough to wash away every vestige of those civilizations on any coastal region, even on rivers, but specifically those who are inhabiting the coastal regions. And in North America, let's assume for a moment that this is true, that the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis is true, and that either a fragment of an asteroid or fragments of an asteroid bombarded the Laurentide ice sheet. Well, you would have a tidal wave, because a lot of that would be instantly vaporized, but it would be certainly instantly liquefied. You would have a tidal wave sweeping across the continental United States from the meltwater, from the glaciers and all of that ice. And so you would literally, it would absolutely devastate human beings everywhere on planet Earth. All of these cataclysmic events happening simultaneously, and if it was an impact, it could also precipitate, and I think it did, what's called an impact winter, which is very much like a nuclear winter. You have the impact, and you have all that debris going up into the atmosphere. It lingers in the atmosphere. You get black rain, by the way, and there's ancient testimony of black rain in regard to this cataclysm, and it would block out the sun, and it would create an impact winter, and the Earth would be locked into a deep freeze again. So, in all of this seems to correspond to the Younger Dryas impact event.
Do you think the Ark is in Turkey?
It very well could be. I'm not sure if that particular site, I don't remember the name of the site in Turkey, but I'm sure you've seen it where it looks like the outline of a boat. I'm not sure that that's the location of the Ark. I know some people have gone looking for the Ark at, in Mount Ararat and different places in the Middle East, and it wouldn't surprise me if artifacts of the Ark still remain. So yeah, I do, by the way, subscribe to a literal Ark, a literal Noah, right? So I certainly subscribe to all of that. I just think that the cataclysm was much more complex than we're accustomed to contemplating as Christians.
All right, Randall, I got a couple of questions, and you showed me a couple of slides off camera here.
Yes, I did.
Why don't we just start with the clean energy, the clean emissions? You had a great slide that showed what.
Yes, I did. Well, this was part of the testing that was done last summer. There's been 4 or 5 tests now that have been done showing various results. And the slide that I showed you was last summer. It was a generator. It should be right about, where is it? Should be right about here, just about coming up. And what this did, here we go. So this was a generator. This generator here was a Honda run by a gasoline generator. So it's a Honda jet, small, the kind you could actually use in a small shop or even as a home generator, right? Now, so what we did was we had 2 rooms with 2 generators. One to be left normal and the other one to be retrofitted with the plasma technology, right? So this is in a large scale, and this is in an industrial laboratory, right? There's about 10 or 12 people there, various backgrounds, scientific and engineering and industry professionals in the group, including me. I was there. I got invited out, so I want to see this thing, because a lot of people have said to me, well, have you ever seen this working? I said, well, no, but I know some credible people that have seen it working and vouch for it, but yeah, so I'm going to go. I want to see it for myself. So went out there. So they ran both generators, calibrated them, looked at the emissions coming out of them, calibrated them. They were essentially the same. And then one of them was retrofitted with the technology, right? So with everybody standing around, turned both generators on, and got to let the generators warm up a minute, right? And then once the generators are warm, the one generator, which had the technology on it, there's a switch to turn the technology on, and it just run in line with the exhaust and the carburetor. And, I can provide you with a slide with some diagrams that shows you the hookup of the thing. It's actually pretty simple. Okay, so I flipped the switch to turn the technology on. And I flipped the switch at 11 minutes and 53 seconds after 10 a.m. in the morning. Okay, so now at this point, we've got a gas analyzer in both generators, and we've got mass spectrometers hooked up to both generators. So, the guys are sitting there with their mass spectrometers. You could see the changing real time. I could watch there on the computer screen, right? So when I turned the technology on, there was, and it's called a Kane, let's see, what is it? Kane 5 analyzer or something, because it can measure concentrations of 5 different gases. So you got carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, oxygen, other hydrocarbons, which probably is mainly methane, but then also nitrogen oxide. So those 5, right? So carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, and oxygen are being measured in percentage, and hydrocarbons and nitrous oxides are measured in parts per million. Okay, so now at the point where we're about ready to turn the technology on, the emissions are showing that 9.3% coming out of the exhaust is carbon dioxide, 9.3%. Carbon monoxide is showing 5.48%. Oxygen is showing 4.66%. Hydrocarbons, 199 parts per million. And nitrogen oxides, 27 parts per million. This is at 11 minutes and 53 seconds after 10 o'clock. Flip the switch. Technology now activates. At 15 minutes and 39 seconds after 10 o'clock, what's coming out, and you've seen this now, so I'm describing, but you've seen it here, and this is the actual printout right from the testing. At 15 minutes after 10 o'clock, carbon dioxide has gone from 9.3% to 0. Carbon monoxide has gone from 5.48% to 0. Hydrocarbons have gone from 199 parts per million to 58 parts per million. And nitrous oxides have gone from 27 parts per million to 4 parts per million. And oxygen has gone from 4.66% to 20.97%.
Interesting. So this is clean.
So don't ask me to explain what's gone on here, other than something on the atomic level. There's some thoughts out there that essentially what we're seeing here is almost like proof of alchemy. We're seeing transmutation, and I'm not making definitive declaration that this is what it is. It's just what it appears to be, that there's a transmutation of elements on the atomic level. Because the question becomes, okay, if you had 9.3% carbon dioxide, 0, what happened to the carbon dioxide? What happened to the carbon monoxide? They're gone. They're gone. Well, where did all that extra oxygen come? We're talking about, let's see, from 4.66% to 20.97%. So almost 5 times the concentration of oxygen is now coming out of that exhaust. Is it possible? I mean, is it even conceivable that somehow the carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, hydrocarbons, nitrous oxides were broken down at the atomic level and transmuted into oxygen? I don't know. And I know there's a lot of really smart people who are right now trying to figure out what the fuck this means.
So, wow.
Now,
how is this hooked up to the generators?
Well, you've got an intake of fresh air, and then it's recycling. It's taking the stuff that would be exhausted and refeeding it back into the thunderstorm generator, which is one of the 3 components of the whole technology. You've got a pre-ionization chamber where the air is drawn in, just ambient air is drawn into this chamber, and it's subjected to infrared light at roughly 100 microns, right? It pre-excites the electrons in the atoms coming in. It is then fed into what is called, we're calling the bubbler. And this is the instrument where billions of microscopic bubbles are created. That's fed into the thunderstorm generator, where I was describing earlier is a series of concentric spheres and rings that set up this vortex, this whirling vortex in opposite, from clockwise to counterclockwise. And when if you get me back, we can figure out a way to share some graphics and images so people can see at home. And what I'm interested in is getting a lot of minds on this, because I think the more brains we've got on this, we're going to be able to figure out what the hell is going on here. So I mean, we can hook this thing up. We can run the tests. We can see the results of the tests. And now you got like 10 guys standing there with various backgrounds, scientific backgrounds, engineering backgrounds, industry professionals, all scratching their heads going, okay, what the hell is going on here?
I'm getting a little confused. Is this powering the generators or cleaning the emissions?
Both.
Or both?
Both. Yeah. But it does, so it requires fossil fuels initially because in order to generate the plasmas in the first place, I think it's like 700 and some degrees. But then once the process is started, it's almost, not quite, but it's almost self-perpetuating. Almost.
Wow.
And I think, I would recommend, like I showed you, Alchemical Science. Jordan Collin has done a really good, and he's ahead of me on this one, because he's been able to focus almost full time for the last 4 to 6 months on this. So he's got some really interesting ideas, and he's also been communicating with the inventor Malcolm Bendel prolifically. So he's got some interesting ideas about what's going on, and I would recommend going to his site, Alchemical Science, and watching. He's got like 6 or 7 or 8 videos now he's done, where he's really breaking it down and explaining what he thinks is going on. Then there's others. I would recommend strikefoundation.earth has got video clips up there, and that's the nonprofit organization that was created to try to put this technology out to the world. Now, there are several patents that have actually, I think, been approved now, applications of the technology. But I kind of look at this almost as analogous to, 120, 130 years ago where we were with alternating current electricity. If you go back and read the history of alternating current electricity, you had a bunch of scientists, inventors, and engineers all scratching their heads trying to figure out how does this work, right? And I don't think we still ultimately don't know what it is and how it works, but we know how to apply it to all kinds of different things. And I think that this is sort of analogous to that, in that there's all kinds of potential here. Malcolm and his small team through Alpha Prospects Limited, which is a website people can go to also learn about it, have applied and I think now received, the last I heard, or they were about to get approved for several patents. But all the rest of it, the basic principles, are open sourced on the web. So Jordan Collins has gotten with a small group of, I'd say, like backyard mechanics that are like going to do a whole series of internal combustion engine retrofits. And there's guys now who are, as we speak, like retrofitting their pickup trucks, right, to see if it works. And now the technology was presented at the Tesla Tech conference in Albuquerque. It was presented at a alternative energy technology conference in Zurich, Switzerland. And now, like we talked about earlier, the Indian Navy is very interested in looking at it. And Malcolm has spent a couple of months in India demonstrating the technology and how it works. One of his colleagues, Phil Dubois, but still there. They've been there about 3 months now, consulting with the Indian government. Now, here's the interesting thing. If you read the Vedas, the Vedic literature, there's all kinds of descriptions of stuff in there that sounds very technological. Like, you ever heard of the Vimana?
I haven't.
Okay, so the Vimana is in the Vedas. It describes, I think it's the Rig Veda, but in some of the Vedas, it's describing the Vimana, and it is a flying machine. That's what it's describing. The Vimana is a flying machine. Look it up on your phone right now, and you'll see. The other thing is the Vajra, and you see these depictions of the great king god Indra wielding the Vajra, right? And then this is like from 4,000 and 5,000 years ago in Vedic India, right? Then fast forward to like 3,000 years ago, roughly, and you see the god Mitra in Persia wielding the Vajra. Then fast forward about another 1,000 years, and in Greece you see Zeus wielding the Vajra. It's called the thunder thunderbolt, Zeus wielding the thunderbolt. Then you can see Roman times the god Mithras wielding the thunderbolt. Well, you look at what they're wielding, and it's pretty much all the same instrument. And it was described as the most powerful instrument in the universe. And when you look at the depictions, and next time I come back on, I can show you this. I'll have images and graphics of replicas of the Vajra. Now, the Vajra, still to this day, there are replicas that are probably duplicates of things that were thousands of artifacts that were found that are thousands of years old. This is a replica of the Vajra. Well, when you look at that and you look at the components of the thunderstorm generator, you go, oh, okay,
Interesting.
And I can show you the correlations when I come back. Now,
how's this been received at all these summits that it was presented to in the Indian Navy?
Well, the last I've heard, the Indian Navy is seriously looking at it for retrofitting ships. I haven't gotten the latest, but the one result of the demonstration out in the Tesla Tech conference last summer in Albuquerque, Mike Robertson, who's the founder of HowTube, which I've partnered with, he live streamed out to like several thousand people around the world. There was also an audience. They did this up on stage, up in an audience of several hundred people seeing it firsthand. They took the generator and retrofitted it on stage, videoed the whole thing, and podcasted out to the world. So as a result of that, Malcolm got invited to this conference in Zurich, Switzerland. So he presented there. Now, at the Tesla Tech conference in Albuquerque, he ended up being sort of the star presenter at the conference. And he was just like last minute. They brought him on, and then he ended up being the star presenter at the thing. And it's all on record now. It's all videotaped. Anybody can track these down. And on my website, I'll have all the links and stuff. But I think Jordan Collin at Alchemical Science already has the links up, so people can go and they can see those videos for themselves. And the idea now is to get it out. So, there's been a whole succession of inventors and scientists that have been working directly or peripherally in this field with this type of energy. And their work has been stolen, locked up, suppressed, classified. The strategy now is get it out there. Open source, so anybody can access it. Decide for yourself whether it's legit. I'd say don't make up your mind beforehand or until you've looked into it. A lot of people say, oh, this is bullshit, without having taken 2 seconds to look into it.
Yeah.
Well, this is impossible. What you're describing is impossible. Well, I got, a dozen scientists, engineers, industry professionals that say, yeah, it's impossible, but God damn it, we saw it. We saw it.
Yeah.
And they're still trying to figure out what exactly they saw.
Man, this is fascinating stuff,
It is. I agree.
Doesn't even seem real.